2022. And it's a 4-year project, so it will be run until next year, 2026. It has 17 partners from all over Europe, different European projects, and it includes research organizations and companies. And the full title of the project is The Holistic Approach for Tackling Food System Risk in a Changing Global Environment. The project is coordinated by Wageningen Food Safety Research, and that's the organization I'm working at. The HOLiFOOD project has 5 strategic objectives, and I will go into more detail of 3 of them, because 3 of them are related to this webinar. The overall strategic objective is to improve the integrated food safety risk analysis framework in Europe, to meet the future challenges from the Green Deal policy-driven transitions. So the Green Deal is a policy instrument which has implications for food safety, direct or indirect, such as the replacing of the chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides. It will also dive into the changes related to the food system due to climate change. And in this way, the project will contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations to really support the realization of a safe transition of our food system. In the project, we focus on 3 dedicated supply chains: the poultry supply chain, mainly broiler chicken, cereal chain, and a legume chain. And in the slide, you see an overall structure of the work packages of the HOLiFOOD project. So we have, in the core, we have several work packages working on the more technical aspect, the research, which is work package 1, 2, and 3, and 6. And work package 8 is looking at the legal aspects and ethical aspects of all the work that's done. And actually, one of our 4 presentations in this webinar is elaborating on the AI Act in Europe. And then we have some overall overarching work packages, like work package 5, which dives into science, policy, and society aspects of the risk analysis framework. As I mentioned, we have 5 specific objectives, and I will go into 3 of them. The first one is to use AI and big data technologies for emerging risk identification tools and methods. Then to have a system to identify and monitoring the emergence of food safety risks, based on drivers of change. So these are drivers in our environment that may affect food safety, with the aim to support risk managers to have a more proactive system to take proactive measures to anticipate on those changes. And this looks like this. We have the supply chain or the food system, and there is drivers of change like the Green Deal, the climate change, but also urbanization, for instance, or international trade, which directly or indirectly may affect food safety. And we look at those drivers of change, indicators related to that, and then monitor these to be very proactive to flag any possible emergence of food safety. The second specific objective is to have more targeted and untargeted methods for chemical and microbial food safety hazards. This work package includes method development for analysis, both fast technologies, but also more instrumental methodologies that can focus on a wide variety of hazards, also look untargeted at the emergence of food safety. And then as a third objective, it's the 5th one in the project, but it's the 3rd one for this webinar, is to develop infrastructures for data and knowledge sharing. So that's basically a system, a platform with a user front end, a dashboard that risk managers can use for early identification of food safety risks. And our next speakers will dive into more detail, will provide you more detail in those technologies that we develop in this project. This is our website, which you can visit for more information. And then I would like to present the topics of this webinar, which is we have 4 speakers, 4 different topics, and all focus on the use of AI for emerging food safety risk identification, where the first 2 speakers, Bas and Souza, will dive into the methodology and the method development. The third one will focus on, this presentation will focus on the dashboard for the end users. And the fourth one, as I already mentioned, will provide some more information on the AI Act and what it means for predicting emerging risk. So with this, I would close my short introduction. I will give the floor to Bas van der Velde, who will present on emerging food safety risk and the holistic approach.
Yes, thank you. I will take over the screen now. One second. Is it sharing?
Yes, we can see your start screen.
We just tested this and then it worked.
Yeah.
There we are.
Now we can see the presentation.
There we are. Okay, thanks for introducing me, Ina. My name is indeed Bas van der Velde. I'm the head of the data science team at Wageningen Food Safety Research, and I also lead Work Package 1. And my talk will be a little bit of an introduction towards AI, because I'm not sure if everyone is an expert in that. And one very specific use case that we tackled in this work package. Okay, so AI is quite an old term, although you do hear it recently more and more often. But it originated in 1956 at a convention in Dartmouth. As you can see, there were not that many people at that convention, but this is typically seen as a starting point of AI. But what is it then, actually, AI? It's sort of a container concept. But when we typically talk about AI now, it's machine learning, which means that, you have some data that can be images, can be text, can be Excel files, whatever. And then you think of certain characteristics of this data. You program that. So when I was doing my PhD, I went to a radiologist. I asked them, why does this look like a cancer? And they said, okay, this looks a little bit like a star shape. So I programmed star shape features, put them into a classifier or the learning machine here, and then you get an answer. The AI systems that you see nowadays are typically using deep learning. And what is different there is that it skips this step of manually crafting these features. So you put all your data into an algorithm, and it figures out itself what the best representations, that's called, are of the data, and uses that to get to an answer. And even more, a subset of that is foundation models like the large language models that you have been hearing a lot about, like ChatGPT or others. I will get back to that very briefly in the end. But please know that this is many continuing field in more and more complex algorithms. This is maybe very abstract, so let me give an example of how something like that would work. Let's say that you have a bunch of pictures of an apple, banana, an orange, and you have many of those. You have them labeled. This is one way to make a machine learning model. This is called supervised learning. And then with these labels and these pictures, this is called a training data set. You train an AI algorithm. After training this AI algorithm, this algorithm understands, okay, this is what an apple looks like, this is what a banana looks like, this is what an orange looks like, but it can also be food safety aspects. So this is what mycotoxins look like, this is what pesticides look like, this is what PFAS looks like. Then you get a new case and you do not know what it is. This is called test data. The algorithm that has been optimized before is used to see, okay, what is this test data? And then you can classify it as an apple. This is a very, very simple example. And of course, they become more and more complex with more and more complex questions that we have. Very shortly, what an emerging food risk is. And I think Susan might have some more detailed descriptions of this, but just to briefly share it with you, it's typically into three categories. So either a hazard that is known, but where the exposure is increased, either a hazard that is new, so that was not known before, or when there's an increased susceptibility to a hazard, for example, for disease or those kind of things. And in the HOLiFOOD project, as Ina already mentioned, we're looking at a holistic approach. So Ina described drivers of change. Those are at the top of this figure. So for example, demographic changes, urbanization, climate change is of course a very clear example of how it can influence how we grow certain crops, but also policy. I mean, we have been exposed to policy and geopolitics in the last years quite abundantly. So you can imagine how that affects food safety issues. And as said before, we're indeed looking at these three supply chains: cereals, legumes, and poultry. Oh yeah, I promised a use case. I will talk about prediction models for food safety, specifically in lentils, and even more specifically in cereals, so maize here. What is typically a common conception is that AI is quite data hungry. So the more complex your algorithm gets, the better it can typically work, but it does need more and more data to work. So to this end, we downloaded all the EFSA monitoring data that is shared by EFSA on a website called Zenodo. So there are over 750 CSV files there, which is sort of like an Excel file. And it's a lot of data with many samples and even more measurements, but they're not really in the same format always. So we spend some time to harmonize that, as we call them, to make sure that we can interpret them using something called ontologies. It's sort of like a manual of how to read this data, and we put it all into a big database to make our work easier and to have this huge amount of data that we need for our models. And that's the chef's database. So if you see this little guy here, then you know that that we're talking about this data. So we have this data, big database. We gathered a lot of these drivers of change for it. It's over 300 features that we gathered. And we put this all into an AI algorithm. I won't go into a lot of details here, but if you have any questions, we're preparing a manuscript and you can always reach out to me, of course. And from this AI algorithm, we will look at food safety, hazard predictions in both cereals and in legumes. And we're also working on the chickens now, but I don't have any results for that yet. I will focus for these results on mycotoxins in grains. So we looked at multiple cereal grains. We looked at multiple mycotoxins and at multiple AI models. And what we found is that our best performing method has an accuracy of around 80%. This is, for those of you who are familiar with machine learning, this is the area under the receiver operating curve, and I can dive into the sensitivity specificities if you want to, but for now, let's assume that this is a pretty good performance. But this is, of course, not very clear what it's now doing. So we use some explainable AI methods to examine why it is giving the results that it is giving. And these are the top features of these 300 plus features in our model. What you can see is that these green ones, they typically relate to something with weather or climate. We also have some features very highly ranked that that relate to how nice it is to live in a certain country. We also have some economic features in there and others as well. To make it even more realistic, in the future, we would like to also incorporate more detailed lab results. So these are examples of microbiological analyses that we do at WFSR, which we are working with computer vision. So to really analyze these pictures and to get information about strains, for example, of bacteria. We're looking at something called high resolution mass spectrometry data, which is very complex and very multidimensional. It's very difficult to analyze this data, but we're looking at this with foundation models. So they're powered by transformers typically. So that's why you have a picture of a transformer here. And you can also go even more realistic with analyzing a lot of text data. And that's a nice bridge to the next speaker, which is Susa. She's going to talk about analyzing text data. So what I want to leave you with is that I showed you some ways of having holistic AI for food safety. So you typically need a lot of data for that. You need to have all the angles that you can figure out. So these are these drivers of change. And you need very advanced algorithms to optimize these methods, such as computer visions or even transformers. Okay, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Bas, for your explanation. As already mentioned by Bas, then we move on to Susa, who will dive into the language models, text models. If you have any comment or question, you can use the chat, so our speakers then can respond to you by the chat. So, Susa, are you ready?
Yeah, it will be me, actually.
It will be you, Akos. Okay,
yeah, no
thanks.
problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm trying
So
to
please
share my
introduce
screen.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, just a moment. Can you see my screen, first of all?
Yes, it's we see it clearly.
Okay, good. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Akos Jozwiak, and I work for the University of Veterinary Medicine Budapest in Hungary. We are also partners in HOLiFOOD, contributing to many work packages, but today this first work package on emerging risk identification is the reason I'm here. So as Bas already mentioned, different AI, data analytics, machine learning, or all the other computational science tools could be used for or help us in identifying emerging risks. And what I wanted to dig a bit deeper today is how this could support the text-based analysis. So for that, I have few slides to have an introduction to the whole problem area, just to better understand what are we dealing with and how these methods could help us. So one of the important points in identifying emerging issues is that the food systems and risk-based approaches to food systems are quite complex in many meanings. But for us today, I think the most important is that I use complexity or complex in a mathematical term. So there are many actors with different connections connected with each other, also producing a lot of various products from different ingredients. And there is a multitude of different drivers like climate change interacting with the whole agri-food chain. So this kind of complexity has a lot of features which are important to us, and one of them is it's very hard, or in some cases even impossible, to predict the future. So in that space, what can we do? And one of the important tasks for risk managers and risk assessors is to continuously evaluate what are the risks of the food systems, and to continuously update this knowledge based on new knowledge, based on new discoveries, based on new data, on exposure, based on all the updates which we could have if we could have access to all this data and information. So when we want to anticipate new issues, so the next big food systems issue, the next big outbreak, we in many cases use this matrix, which is used also by complexity sciences, but was firstly used in defense strategies. So we can split our knowledge into 4 different areas. One is which we call the known knowns, which are the things we know, and we know that we know. So this is the knowledge of the institutions. This is our personal knowledge, which we are aware of. And maybe this is the less interesting for our part. Also, we have the known unknowns. So these are the parts which we know that we don't know. These are the areas for scientific discoveries and research. So we have these research gaps, and we need to discover this knowledge. But there are also many other interesting areas. One is the unknown knowns. So these are the things which we don't know that we know. So these are the things which maybe our institution knew in the past, someone knew, but we don't have this institutional knowledge because it's somewhere lost in a document which is never read by anyone. Or this is also other old scientific discoveries which we forgot as institutions or as persons. Or also these are the things which someone else discovered already in the world, but we don't have knowledge of yet. And the 4th quadrant of this diagram or matrix is the unknown unknowns. So these are the things which we don't know, and we even don't know that we don't know. Apart from the joke that we don't know that, this is the area which is usually called in mathematics or statistics the black swan events, which are the unpredictable high effect events which shape our future, but we cannot really know it. So when we want to approach these emerging issues, we don't really want to concentrate on the unknown unknowns. These are the most fancy things, or the things which you would be really happy to predict. But to be honest, the 2 other areas, the unknown knowns and the known unknowns, are giving us much more hope and promise that these are the things which we are able to discover because there is already some kind of information or data out there, but we just need to find it. So when we are talking about emerging risks and how to find this emerging information, very briefly, I would like to talk about emergence. There are many definitions around emergence, but I think what are the 2 important features of emergence or emerging things is the time dynamics. So every emergent issue has this change over time. So this is an important nature of it, that something happened and it was not present in the past and now it is present. And the other aspect is the novelty, which means that we don't know yet and we want to know, and we will know probably in the future. But this is very highly context dependent. So my personal knowledge or a knowledge of an institution on a particular issue will be completely different. And it will mean that there will be things which are new to some, but not new at all to others. So this high context dependency and also the time dynamics kind of will make very hard to predict or to anticipate these issues on a uniform level applicable to anyone. So what can we do? And what is coming to help is computational science in general, but we can call it data analytics or also AI in some cases, which is able to discover patterns in large amount of data, which would not be possible to discover from smaller amount of data. And this promise is currently at that stage that we already have these tools from AI, machine learning, also other areas like network science, which are very helpful in detecting emergence in complex systems, which food systems are also complex. And when we want to detect emergence, from this approach, very simplistically, we could say that there are two kinds of ways how we can get our hands on emerging issues. One is to somehow imitate the human decision-making process, which is, if I'm an expert and I want to detect emerging risks of the food chain, what I can do is that I read a lot of papers and compare it with my own knowledge or my institutional knowledge, and I will say, okay, that's something new I didn't hear about yet. This is an emerging issue to me, and I make a stock of it, I list it, and then I will make actions on it. But on a large scale, if I want to scale it up and I also want to read many thousands of papers a day, that's not really working, because then I would need to use different algorithms. But for that, I would need to then define what is my baseline knowledge, what is my current knowledge, and compared to which this novelty is emerging. So we need to also define in that case what is emergence, what is new, what is novelty. We need to develop ontologies for that. So this is a hard task when I want to scale it up. The other more promising way was, and is still kind of, that we don't look for the novelty from this human thinking process perspective, but we think about novelty and emergence from a complexity science perspective. So we would like to detect emerging patterns in networks or emerging topics from large amount of texts, where we could do this analysis automatically, and we don't need to compare emergence to a baseline knowledge, but we need to see the emergence over time, which could be automatized. But still, it is a hard task to do. What we do in the project is few things. What I would like to briefly mention, that what are these, and also some outlook to the future. So one way of approaching this problem area is to have our texts, which could be news from different media outlets, also scientific publications, and analyze the texts over time. What is this news about? How they compare to previous news? Are there any topics which are emerging from this news? And for that, there is a convenient method provided by network analysis, where we could detect easily trending topics in media, which then assessed by human experts could provide this overview that what is an emerging food safety issue. At our university, we do this for many years now, with always improving these algorithms. But in the project, we wanted to move a bit forward from that as well. So the other possible toolkit developed by our partners in Germany, the BFR, is the weak signal mining, which takes a stock of all the words and terms in the different news or scientific publications and try to identify that how these terms are changing over time. Are they increasing? Is there a specific word or combination of words which is increasing over time, which signifies some sort of an importance? And also to identify that, or somehow dissect what are these so-called weak signals compared to strong signals or noise, which would mean that weak signals are terms which are not appearing very frequently, but still appearing in many cases, and their frequency is increasing over time. So they have a growth rate, but they are not strong signals in terms of they are not jeopardizing the media. They are not the most important topics, but these could be called as an underlying constant discussion, let's call it that way, in the media, which could be detected as weak signals, which could be then later assessed by experts and identify if there is an emerging food safety issue is associated with these topics. And what we are working on in the project is the combination of the two approaches. So topic modeling, so identifying topics, together with weak signal mining, which would lead to a dynamic topic modeling, which is about doing the same exercise, comparing different risk-related topics over time, how they change over time, and identifying in a more automated way that which are the food safety-related topics discussed in the media and in scientific literature, which would qualify as weak signals and would signify their presence as important for food safety risk assessment and risk management. And one more approach, as one of my last slides, is the upcoming large language models, which just as a matter of fact, they are very interesting and very important, very powerful, but we need to know that these large language models, they don't contain reality. They are language models, they are predicting words, but they are doing this very, very, very well and increasingly well. And if you ask any better large language model about emerging food safety risks, it will have a quite good list of these emerging issues, but it's based on the huge amount of training data set, what these models were trained on, and they are not able themselves to detect emerging really new issues. However, what they are really good for is to bring back this human decision-making or human thinking perspective, as I was mentioning before, because they are capable of screening really huge amount of text. And if combined well with other models, we could use them to really identify importance or emergence from like scientific publications or from news. But for that, we need to combine them with other so-called reality models or mechanistic models or other approaches which would provide the large language models the feed of data and information on the new topics or new fields of discoveries in the food safety space. So summarizing very quickly, data analytic approaches are quite effective in reducing the noise which we can observe in the huge amount of publications and news, and to help us in filtering down this huge amount of text into smaller pre-filtered topics, which then we would still need human expertise to decide on and put these into context. Because as I mentioned, this is very context dependent, and it's very important to understand our specific institutions, our specific companies, our specific research minds context on why are we doing emerging risk identification and what is new to us and what is less new for our purpose. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you would like to have any questions, just please raise them. Thank you very much.
Yes, Akos, thanks a lot for your presentation and providing us more detail on the possibilities of using text data. For sake of time, we move on to our next speaker, who is Kushal from Creme Global, and he will present the dashboard for emerging risk identification. So meanwhile, if you have questions for our previous speakers, Bas and Akos, please use the chat. Yes, Kushal, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Ina. So, hi, my name is Kushal Doddakula, and I'm a chemical data scientist at Creme Global based in Ireland, and I'm here speaking on behalf of William O'Sullivan. So, let's start with the big picture. Now, data sharing, when done right, empowers us to make better decisions in a complex world. And at Creme Global, our mission is exactly that, to enable better decision-making using science and data. But to do this well, we need more than just good intentions. We need to master the technologies that make the data not just available, but also useful. And now, this diagram lays out the HOLiFOOD infrastructure, just expanding on the work packages we've seen earlier. And as you can see, work package 1 feeds in various data streams from surveillance, scientific literature, market information, and more, all orchestrated through an extract, transform, and load, or an ETL pipeline, into a central shared database. And then work package 2 focuses on tools and results, enabling interactive access to this rich data environment. And surrounding all of these efforts is work package 6, responsible for integrating all the technical work packages and culminating in a final DSS built out of the database. This is an incredibly modular system built for collaboration and scalability. But what is the point of all this data? And that's actually quite simple: to support risk assessors and policymakers. We translate complex systems into interactive visualizations, making the problem spaces easier to explore and enabling more informed decisions. By connecting the dots between different data domains, we reduce uncertainty and improve the clarity for decision makers. And it's important to emphasize that this isn't just about sharing raw data. It's about sharing systems, processes, tools, and infrastructure, everything that would be needed to act on that data. And though the infrastructure is still conceptual in parts, it's an invaluable achievement to have the blueprint laid out so clearly. We know where all the pieces are just as we start to solve the puzzle. And here's a look at the Creme Global data portal login screen. This is the entry point where partners can submit data for visualization and interact with the dashboards. Once inside, users are taken to the data submission portal where they can submit data for visualizations either manually or automatically. We have built-in validation for incoming files to ensure consistency across submissions. And at the top of the page, we see the tab that allows users to access their dashboards. And we'll take a look at those now. But just before we dive in, please note that these are still early versions of the dashboard that are under review and refinement. And we start with the weak signal mining model, identifying topics based on their frequency and signal power across data sources. This dashboard allows users to see what keywords emerge from source and offering an explanation for their relevance. Furthermore, the data can be filtered by counts and signal types to enable decision makers to prioritize emerging issues based on their sources. Following on, we have the topic modeling dashboard. This dashboard displays the topic modeling used to cluster together related terms to find overlap in their prevalence. Similar to the weak signal dashboard, users can filter the keywords to track a specific topic and use cutoff filters to help prioritize what topics they need to look for. When we look at the time series dashboard, it displays a set of specific predictions for given commodities, predicting the emergence of food safety events. Users can compare their predicted values in red to the measured values in blue, giving a sense of what expected food events may occur, while also tracking actual occurrences. And finally, we have the supply chains dashboard. This looks at tracking and predicting pesticide exceedance across a number of commodities and countries, and enables users to track drivers of exceedance, such as weather or commodity or crops shipped. Yes. So to wrap up, HOLiFOOD, it's not just about the dashboard, it's about developing a collaborative ecosystem, enabling proactive risk management in the food sector. With a flexible infrastructure and insightful analytics, it empowers decision makers to act swiftly and confidently. Thank you for your attention. I'll do my best to answer any questions as they arise, but I may defer them to Will once he's back in the office.
Yes, thanks for presenting shortly the dashboard to us, and the dashboard will be continued to be filled with more models and data in the last 1.5 years of the project.
Yeah.
If you have questions, yes, please put them in the chat. Meanwhile, we move over to Eva, which she will present us some details on the AI Act and what it means for emerging food safety risk prediction. So Eva, please go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you. Wait, let me just share my screen. The right one. It's this one. Can you see?
Yes, we see, but it's not in the present. Yes, now it's in presentation.
Now? Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So yes, I am Eva Korenjak, and I'm a research associate at the University of Vienna, Department for Innovation and Digitalization in Law. And yes, I'm also kind of stepping in for my colleague who is also a bit longer in HOLiFOOD project and a bit more experienced. So I will do my best to cover this topic. Yes, so the topic is AI Act's legal framework for predicting emerging risks. And just a second. So yeah, this is the agenda. So first I will just would like to walk you through how AI can be used for predicting food safety risks, and on the example also of the HOLiFOOD project. And then also a bit of a brief overview of the AI Act and what are its implications for the food safety risks. And at the end, Q&A. So if we have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. So the first part, yes. So I mean, I will just go briefly through that because I'm sure most of you are already familiar with this. So yeah, well, food safety issues are arise from the fact that food production is a very complex web of supply chain actors, and they're interacting at the global scale. They're being influenced by international and local developments, and also by the different drivers, such as already mentioned today, climate change, but also technology and innovation. And from them, yeah, could be chemical, biological, and physical risks to food safety. And AI, how can AI support the food safety is the following. So most current approaches are symptom-based, and so they're just reacting to already existing risks to the food safety. And what AI can do is to offer more proactive approach. So with different AI systems that have been presented today, so machine learning, computer vision, or language processing, and so on. AI system can acquire and process very, very large volumes of data from different sources, and therefore they can offer some control and prevention measures to early detect and also prevent food safety risks. So AI can be used in supply chain monitoring, in contamination detection, predictive analytics, and so on. So this is the example of HOLiFOOD as it has been presented today. It will be, the aim is to improve the integrated food safety risk analysis by also, among others, applying AI and big data analytics to develop this systematic approach and to enable the early identification of the hazards to food safety. Yes, this has already been very much in detail explained today. So since it has been done so by experts, I don't want to go any more into detail about what particular AI systems and models will be used in the HOLiFOOD project. But in general, I will focus more on what legal considerations can stem from this, from the use of such AI systems. So, for example, when monitoring drivers of change, since the AI is using this vast amount of data, where also personal data can be processed, even if it's unintentional, it's important to keep in mind the data protection measures, and also to process data that is reliable and of high quality, and to keep track where does it come from and how it's processed. And for example, for prediction models, for early warnings, the clear documentation is needed, and also human oversight, so that the final decision is at the end made by a human, not by a machine itself. as its decisions can be, as a so-called black box, so not explainable or not easy to understand. And also with identifying so-called unknowns, this can also be hard to explain. So developers should document how the system works and be clear if there are any uncertainties about that. And in order to address all of these risks or similar risks that stem from use of the AI systems, AI Act has been adopted. So now I will come to the actual legal part of the presentation. So just a brief overview to the ones who might not be familiar with it. The AI Act is the first ever comprehensive legal framework on AI worldwide, and it's binding in nature. So it falls under the category of regulation. So these are the directly applicable legal instruments of the EU. And yeah, it's also referred to as product safety regulation. So basically, the aim is to ensure that the products that use AI systems are safe to use. And it has entered into force on August 1st in 2024. So it's been almost a year now. However, it is not fully applicable yet. So it will be so in 2 years after the entry into force, so in August 2026. However, there are also some exceptions to that. For example, certain transparency obligations or prohibitions of certain AI systems that are presenting unacceptable risks are already in force, or some certain provisions are not yet in force. So yeah, but in general, the most urgent ones are already in force. So like with the systems that are prohibited. But I will come to that later, to the categorization of AI systems. Before that, so I would just like to mention that the goal of the AI Act is to establish a trustworthy AI in the EU. So basically, it means that we develop and use AI that we can trust, and that it's safe to use, and that it's compliant with fundamental rights, and that is human-centric. And for that, the subject matter of the AI Act is development and use of AI systems. And based on the risk that they present to the human rights, there are certain provisions that either prohibit AI systems, or they they are subject to certain requirements, and the addressees are developers and deployers, so the people who use the AI systems. And yes, but before we know if the AI Act is applicable or not, we have to also see what is the material scope, so to which AI systems or to which products does AI Act applies. And so the so-called AI system, or the definition of AI systems, is basically that it's a machine-based system, that it has some kind of autonomy, and that it generates outputs, for example, predictions or recommendations that then have some kind of influence on physical or virtual environment. So it's a very broad definition. However, it does not apply. Also, there are certain exceptions. So even if a system falls under this definition, it still doesn't apply if it's developed for the sole purpose of scientific research. But this is only the case if it's prior to the system being placed on the market or put into service, because from the moment that it's being put on the market, the AI Act starts to apply. And also, it's not applicable to AI systems that are used purely for personal, non-professional activities. or the ones who are developed on the base of a free and open source license. But here it's again exception of the exception. So just before, only so before it's being put on the market or put into service as a high-risk AI system. So, sorry, maybe this was unclear, but well, so it does not apply to free and open source licensed AI system unless they are placed on the market or put into service as high-risk AI systems. And this brings me to the categorizations of AI systems. So AI Act has this risk-based approach that is at the core of the Act, and it categorizes AI systems in 4 different categories. So the first one is unacceptable risk that presents clear threat to the safety and human rights, and it's therefore prohibited. So this is already enforced, for example. And some examples include AI-based systems that are manipulating or decepting, or that so can recognize emotions in workplaces, for example, or in education institutions. So these kind of systems are prohibited. Then the second category is high-risk AI systems. So these still pose some serious risk to health or to safety, human rights, but are not unacceptable for certain reasons. For example, they are necessary for critical infrastructure, such as transport, or they are necessary for in the health sector, for example, in the robot-assisted surgery. And for these AI systems, there are strict obligations that developers and deployers need to adhere to. Then the third category is limited risk AI systems. For these, for example, chatbots, here are only transparency obligations. For example, a developer needs to provide information to the users that they are using AI. Then the fourth and final category is minimal risk. So these are actually the majority of AI systems, and there are no specific obligations in the AI Act for these kind of systems. For example, this would be spam filters or AI video games. And so for high-risk AI systems, there are strict obligations, as I mentioned. And yeah, these obligations include, for example, first of all, you need to assess what risk does the system pose, and also to plan some mitigation measures, but also to ensure that the high-quality data sets are being fed to the system, and to provide detailed documentation to the authorities, but also to the users of the AI systems, and to ensure appropriate human oversight, so that there are always humans who are at the end responsible and taking decisions, and not the AI system itself. And so in the food safety topic, first of all, so it needs to be first of all, a developer or deployer needs to see if the tool that they are developing or using falls under the definition of AI system, and to which risk category it belongs to. Then it needs to be figured out if the person is developer or deployer, because then based on that, different provisions apply. And this could be, for example, in the case of the AI system for food safety risks, a human oversight provision in case they present high risk, so they must involve some multidisciplinary team, including experts throughout the whole development process, and they need to be regularly reviewed in the key stages of the development of the AI system, for example, in data collection or model training. And also it needs to make sure that the AI system only guides the users in the identification of emerging risks, but final decision should be made by a human. Then there are transparency or explainability provisions. So as I also already mentioned, that the results needs to be clearly communicated to the deployers, for example, in the report on the platform or in the scientific publications. And also it needs to be explained how the AI system operates, for example, on the platform. And then finally, traceability, also to provide detailed documentation. Where did the data came from, on which the AI system has been trained, and what logic did it use? So these are just some examples of the provisions that could be applicable for these kind of AI systems. And yes, this is all from my side. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Eva. Thanks a lot for presenting the implications of the AI Act for emerging food safety risk prediction. And I see questions and answers popping up in the chat, which is very good. We can keep this chat open for a few more minutes. But for sake of time, we will close this webinar. I would like to thank you a lot for your attendance and your interest in our webinar. And if you have more questions or would like to have more information, please visit our website. I will also put into the chat my email so you can reach out to me if you want to be in contact with one of our presenters or other partners in the project. And with that, I would like to close, and I hope to see you again in our next webinar. So please follow our LinkedIn post to be updated on that. Thanks a lot and see you again.